Aria Delacroix felt incredibly awkward. But Xavier Ashford had the thick skin to see things through. He insisted on finishing feeding her the entire glass of water before turning to speak with the elder doctor. Ms. Delacroix was caught up in Kara's troubles. It's only right that I take care of her. The elder Dr. Williams chuckled with his usual good-natured tone. Oh, I see. What a quick change in status. After examining Aria and confirming that she was stable, he gave her a kind smile. With Xavier taking care of you personally, I'd say recovery should be quick. Aria's face burned with embarrassment. The doctor, still chuckling, left the room. Aria picked up her phone, intending to call Amelia, but Xavier stopped her. Aria was left speechless. Xavier seemed completely unaffected by her discomfort. Calmly, he added, I've also asked my assistant to send over dinner. That was the last straw. Are you keeping such a close watch on me because you're afraid I'll ruin your sister's happiness? She asked, her tone biting. Xavier, leaning lazily against the bedside table as he texted his assistant on WhatsApp, let out a soft chuckle. And how do you plan on doing that, Miss Delacroix? He asked, his voice smooth but sharp. With your body? Or that old, embarrassing love story? I thought Talon already made his choice. It's just taking you a while to catch on. His face was a masterpiece, but his words were merciless. Whatever good feelings Aria had left for him evaporated in that moment. She turned away, deliberately facing the opposite direction. Xavier crossed his long legs and gazed at the woman in the bed, the corner of his lips barely curling into a faint, nearly imperceptible smile. Was she sulking? About half an hour later, Xavier's assistant arrived with dinner. The assistant recognized Aria from her previous visit to the law firm. She had initially assumed Aria was just another woman chasing after her boss, but seeing Xavier personally take care of her and go to such lengths made her rethink things. Her gaze held a hint of playful curiosity. Aria was in no mood to think about what the assistant's looks meant. She was exhausted and hungry, so she thanked her and opened the wooden box of food. It was a bowl of warm, nourishing porridge, light, easy to digest, and perfect for someone recovering. The aroma made her feel a rare moment of comfort. She felt a wave of warmth in her chest, sensing a genuine touch of thoughtfulness from Xavier. Her naturally soft nature made it easy for her to be moved. Attorney Ashford, thank you for today. Xavier didn't intend to have dinner with her. He continued to sit cross-legged, casually scrolling through his phone as he replied in a relaxed tone. Aria froze for a second. She owed him, and he was a man of power and influence. She had no choice but to lower her head and swallow her pride. Xavier lifted his gaze, eyes landing on her. Aria knew how to read a room and sat quietly, letting him observe her. She was aware that he was attracted to her appearance and figure. His gaze carried traces of something deeper, something unmistakably male. After a moment, Xavier put his phone away. Sincere? He asked, his tone calm but pointed. His presence was overwhelming, and Aria didn't dare meet his gaze. She lowered her head and took a small sip of porridge. Satisfied, Xavier stood up and left with his assistant. The room fell silent. Alone, Aria lay in bed, feeling the emptiness around her. She still felt a bit unwell, so she closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep. When she woke up again, it was 9 p.m. The VIP ward was eerily quiet at night, with only the sound of rustling leaves and the occasional chirp of insects outside. Aria walked to the window and opened it. Below was a lush garden, its trees casting shadows over colorful flowers in full bloom. The fresh scent of summer grass filled the air. Feeling a sudden urge for fresh air, Aria decided to take a short walk. Moments later, she was outside, her feet sinking slightly into the soft grass as she inhaled the crisp, clean air. The night was quiet, calm, and serene. Just as she was lost in her thoughts about her uncertain future, a sweet, delicate voice pierced the silence. Talon, kiss me one more time. Aria froze, caught off guard. Kara Ashford? She was here too. Aria lifted her gaze slightly, and under the soft glow of the moon, she saw a couple entangled in a deep, passionate kiss, completely lost in their own world. Talon held his fiancée tightly by the waist, cupping her face as if she were the most precious thing in the world. For someone as temperamental as him, he was surprisingly gentle, like coaxing a child. Just one last kiss, then you should go to sleep. Kara, nestled in his arms, looked up at him with innocent yet provocative eyes. Talon, we're already engaged. When are we finally going to be together? Talon was about to brush it off when something in the corner of his eye caught his attention. Aria was standing under the corridor's arch, silent and composed, watching them. His arms tightened around Kara instinctively, pressing her closer to his chest. He didn't want her to notice Aria, but he couldn't take his eyes off Aria. Talon never expected Aria to make it out alive. He had already accepted that sacrificing her was necessary. Yet here she was, completely unharmed. Kara, oblivious to his turmoil, remained nestled against him, completely immersed in the warmth of their embrace. Her fingers traced gentle patterns over his chest as she murmured, "Talon, what are you waiting for?" Talon responded absent-mindedly. His real focus was elsewhere. He was watching Aria, waiting for her reaction. But she merely smirked, just a small, fleeting curl of her lips, before turning to leave. A sharp pang hit his chest. She used to love him obsessively. If he so much as frowned, she'd be anxious for hours, doing anything she could to make him happy. But now, she wasn't even fazed by the sight of him with another woman. He didn't believe it. He refused to believe that Aria felt nothing. "You really want this that badly?" Talon asked coolly. Then, without waiting for a response, he tilted Kara's chin up and kissed her fiercely. His lips were harsh and forceful, as if he were proving something, not to Kara but to himself. Kara whimpered, pushing against him weakly. "Talon, what's wrong with you?" Talon stopped. His gaze was dark, his expression unreadable. Without another word, he swept Kara into his arms and carried her toward the VIP suites. Kara blushed furiously, hiding her face against his shoulder. "You really want me?" she asked in a whisper. Talon let out a low hum of agreement. But as he stepped into the hallway, he glanced sideways. Aria was already gone. His expression dimmed. Later that night, in the private suite, Talon and Kara were finally intimate for the first time. Kara was shy but eager. Talon couldn't say he didn't enjoy it, but something was missing. When it was over, it was already dawn. Talon sat on the terrace, a cigarette between his fingers. The small wooden table beside him held an open pack. He had already smoked 4 or 5. By all accounts, he should be satisfied. He had everything he wanted. A beautiful fiancée, the benefits of her family's wealth and power, and his desires met. And yet his chest felt hollow. He couldn't shake the image of Aria's expression, mocking, indifferent. From behind, soft arms wrapped around his waist. Kara pressed against his back, her voice gentle. "What are you thinking about?" Talon stubbed out his cigarette and pulled her into his lap, murmuring against her ear, "Kara, no one is better than you." Kara melted into him, entwining their fingers. "Then you have to be good to me, okay? Love me forever, spoil me." Talon swallowed hard. But the truth was, he never loved anyone, he only loved power. Aria Delacroix had been a casualty of that, and Kara Ashford was no exception. After a pause, Kara murmured, "I saw Miss Delacroix earlier." "Talon, are you still feeling guilty for not saving her?" "Don't worry. My brother rescued her and even took care of her himself. You can relax. Relax." Talon let out a bitter laugh. Then his expression darkened further. Because he couldn't ignore it anymore. Xavier Ashford's concern for Aria Delacroix was far from ordinary. Aria woke up early in the morning. Beside her pillow, a small, elegant velvet box sat quietly. She blinked, momentarily dazed, before reaching out and opening it. Inside was a dazzling diamond ring, Tiffany's classic design, its carat weight clearly substantial. Aria immediately knew who had sent it. And she found it utterly ridiculous. Talon had cornered her, left her with no way out, nearly had her violated. Yet he had the audacity to send her a diamond ring? She was about to call the nurse to return it when the door swung open. Talon walked in, his eyes landing on her just as she was holding the ring. His voice was uncharacteristically soft. "You're awake. Do you like it?" Aria snapped the box shut, a faint smile curving her lips. "Like it?" she echoed, her tone laced with mockery. What woman wouldn't like a diamond ring? But Talon, "I don't want anything from you." A cold silence settled between them. Aria had thought that seeing him again, facing the man who had betrayed her so ruthlessly, would fill her with disgust, with rage. Yet surprisingly she felt nothing. It was as if he were a stranger to her now. Perhaps after complete despair, love simply ceased to exist. Talon's gaze darkened as he looked down. "Aria Delacroix, this is my way of compensating you. Nothing more." Aria lifted her head, blinking back the sting of unshed tears. Compensation? Her voice trembled, but her resolve did not. Talon, how do you plan to compensate me? With a ring? If you truly feel guilty, let my father go. I'll leave N City immediately. I'll take my parents far away, disappear from your sight forever. I'll never stand in your way again. Talon, I'm begging you, is that too much to ask? Talon couldn't do that. His hands slid into his pockets, his stance unwavering. We'll talk once you've thought things through. Something inside Aria finally snapped. She grabbed the box and hurled it at him with all her strength. Get out, Talon. The velvet box struck the side of his forehead, leaving a thin red scratch. But Talon didn't care. He bent down, picked up the box and tucked it back into his pocket. One day he thought he would personally slip this ring onto Aria's finger, make her his whether she wanted it or not. This time, he said calmly, was an accident. Aria clenched her eyes shut. Get out. Talon hesitated for a brief moment as if he had more to say, but before he could utter another word, the door opened again. Xavier Ashford stepped inside. Dressed immaculately in a tailored black and white suit, his crisp white shirt pressed to perfection, he exuded an effortless elegance. The tension in the room was palpable, but Xavier acted as though he hadn't noticed. He gave Talon a slight nod before turning his attention to Aria. Then from his pocket he retrieved a folded receipt. Ms. Delacroix, your medical bill came out to $22,500. He extended the paper toward her. Transfer it to me via WhatsApp? Aria was still trying to process what was happening when Xavier smoothly plucked her phone from the bedside table. He casually leaned against the bed, scanning a QR code to add her on WhatsApp. Ms. Delacroix, you're really broke, huh? Only $8,500 in your balance. Aria's face burned. Completely serious, Xavier continued, you still owe me $14,000. How about this? Join me for a round of golf sometime and we'll call it even. Aria lifted her gaze slightly, her long chestnut waves cascading over her shoulders, soft and effortless. She reached out and lightly touched Xavier's arm. I can go with you right now. Xavier arched a brow, then shifted his gaze to Talon, his smirk deepening. Talon, do us a favor and step out for a bit, would you? He said smoothly. Miss Delacroix gets a little shy when you're around. That single word, Talon, was enough to tip the power balance in the room. Talon clenched the velvet box in his hand, his grip so tight his knuckles turned white. Finally, forcing a smile, he replied, I won't disturb you. Then he turned and left. The door clicked shut. With Talon gone, all the strength drained from Aria Delacroix's body. She slumped against the headboard, murmuring softly, Attorney Ashford, thank you. Xavier Ashford set her phone down on the bedside table, his expression unreadable. Then, with a hint of amusement in his voice, he asked, weren't you going to keep me company? Aria lifted her gaze, caught off guard. Attorney Ashford, I was just playing along with you earlier. Xavier remained silent, studying her intently, his dark eyes deep and unreadable. He was dangerously attractive, and under his piercing gaze, any woman would feel something stir within her. Aria felt a faint tremor ripple through her, a quiet but undeniable awakening of something inherently feminine.